There is a famous saying, give a man a fish and he will eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he will eat for a lifetime. Education undoubtedly has a pivotal role in a nation's economic and social development. I would now like to request Mr. Shafqat Mahmood, Federal Minister for Education, to share his thoughts on shaping the education system of Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Shafqat Mahmood.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Mr. Asfar Ahsan, Mr. Ali Akhai, Mr. Rashid Bashir, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking Asfar and the Nutshell Group for inviting me to this event today. And I've been truly enlightened by the various speakers who came before me, General Zubair Hayat and Mr. Rashid Bashir. And let me say that it's a unique privilege for me to be allowed or given the opportunity to work in the sector of education. There is much to do and there is a will to do it, but it's an honor that this is the area that has been assigned to me. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last 7-8 months that I have been in this position is that there are so many passionate and dedicated people I've met who are giving their time, effort and money in the cause of education in Pakistan. It's really, truly amazing. I did not know about this, I must confess to you, that unless you come here in this position and start interacting with people, some of them are sitting here also, who have dedicated their life to the cause of education, and that's truly heartwarming. But while that has happened, unfortunately, at the state level, our rhetoric has not kept pace with our actions. I don't think that ever in our history, any government has not said that education is a great priority for them. This has always been the standard mantra. Education is very important. But when you look at our performance after 72 years, you realize that despite this constant rhetoric of education being the stepping stone to the future and so on and so forth, the result is that after nearly 72 years, we have 58% literacy. And that figure is also slightly debatable. We have over 20 million children who are not in school. We have different streams of education which are creating different mindsets, different ways of thinking in the country. We have serious quality issues where children who are in class 6 or class 8 have learning levels of class 3 or 4. And even university graduates, not all of them, but some of them, do not have the standards or the quality of writing or reading or speaking that is expected of people who have done masters or bachelors and so on and so forth. So there has been a serious disconnect between what we propose, what we say, and what we do. And that disconnect needs to be rectified. So when we took over, the first task was to clearly identify what are our challenges. And the ones that I have listed stood out very, very clearly as the main challenges that we face in education. We had to do something about literacy. We have to do something about out-of-school children, quality, skills. One of the areas where we've been seriously lacking is skills. That we've created some degree of education. We have created educated people, but they don't have the required skills to go into the job market. So we identified our priorities and we are working on them. But then we also realized the constraints and difficulties that are in the way of achieving quick results. I agree with Rashid Saab that there are no quick results, particularly in the field of education. It will take a while. But apart from the constitutional constraints, 18th Amendment, and the fact that education largely has been devolved to the provinces, particularly school education, even aspects of higher education. But there are others also. And when I was hearing Rashid Saab, I was saying that I wish government was like a corporation with a lot of highly paid people who are responding to a very, very defined chain of command where they take decisions and act upon them, and there are no stay orders coming from the courts, there are no chapas from some other institutions, there are no political and other issues to tackle, there are no D-Chowk dharnas going on issues. So government is a complicated business, and therefore besides thinking correctly, charting the correct course, it is also a fairly complicated exercise trying to navigate your way through all the difficulties and constraints and complications that the public sector brings. So, but that has not deterred us and should not deter us. On the issue of the 18th Amendment, as it was mentioned, we have created the Inter-Provincial Education Ministers Conference. In fact, next Monday we are having the fourth meeting of the Inter-Provincial Education Ministers Conference. And the idea is that whatever we decide, whatever we want to do, we take all the provinces along with us. We don't do it on our own. And so far, by and large, we have been quite successful in that. There are difficulties. I think I can mention that I went and met the Chief Minister Sindh. I went and met and my basic plea on the question of education has been that education is beyond politics. And therefore we have to, if we are committed to education, then we have to transcend our political limitations and go forward on education. On out-of-school children, we have launched a widespread program in Islamabad as a start for us to learn from what we do here. We identified over 11,000 children who were not going to school in Islamabad, and we are working on that, and we are learning from that. Why do children don't go to school? What is the reason why their parents don't find any relevance in the education that is being given to the children? Is it poverty? Are these cultural factors which prevent children from going to school? So while we are all enrolling children, and by yesterday we had enrolled out of 11,000, 5,000 out-of-school children into school in Islamabad just in this year. And by the end of June, we hope, by the end of May, we hope to have, this is our hope, that every child whom we identified as out of school in Islamabad Capital Territory will be in school, inshallah ta'ala. But the challenge will not end there, because we will have to then make sure that the children who come to school also stay in school. And what we learn from here, we hope to scale nationwide. We also have started an enrollment drive in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. I was in Jamrud the other day. And you know what is so interesting is that even in the tribal area, the desire and the demand for education is so huge. And not just male education, female education. And I was told over there that the real problem is access. That we need maybe 10 times more schools than we have right now. There is so much demand for education. So obviously there is a lot of distance to travel, and hopefully we will make a serious effort that these 20 million children out of school, inshallah, a significant portion of them starts to go to school in all the provinces. On literacy, what we are analyzing is that over the last 71 years, there have been a number of adult literacy programs, because literacy is concerned with out-of-school children, of course, but literacy is also concerned with adults who are illiterate. And we found that we are trying to analyze why is it that all our adult literacy programs have not really worked in the past. What we are also looking at, and this is maybe I'm too optimistic, and maybe one looks for solutions which are, in a sense, quick and fast. So I'm looking for a magic bullet in this, because if you are at 58% today, for example, and we want to go to 70%, we will have to educate 1 crore 44 lakh people. 1 crore 44 lakh people to reach from 58 to 70. So how do you educate or make literate? By the way, the difference is that to make people literate, you have accelerated learning programs which last for 40-45 days. So how do you do it? So maybe that's where technology comes in, and we just heard earlier about Khan Academy and others, and we're looking at so many different kinds of technological solutions. There has been an experiment which I'm so keen to understand and maybe replicate, in which through mobile phones, some degree of literacy has been created. Hopefully, if we can study it further, maybe we can bypass the old methodology of creating adult literacy centers and getting teachers to go there and students and adults to come there. Maybe we can leapfrog through technology this constraint of creating, for example, if we take the figure of 1 crore 44 lakhs, we needed 700,000 centers. We needed 21 lakh teachers. So the point is that technology maybe will come to the rescue, and therefore we are looking seriously at technological solutions. By the way, on the subject of technology, we are also looking at technology-driven classroom learning, because we have found that in some places, wherever technology has been used, learning levels have gone up. Maybe it's because of game playing. Because children, when they get some kind of a tablet or they have a smart board, it feels like game playing. And because it feels like game playing, children get involved. So how can we scale it up countrywide? Maybe someday, not too far off, we may have a $15, $20 tablet. So if you have a $15, $20 tablet, you can really scale it up. That also is true of teacher training, for example. Instead of bringing teachers to one place and giving them training in an institution, you can distribute tablets. It's already happening. That you distribute tablets to teachers who learn their lessons through which are all pre-packaged over there. So really, technology has a lot of potential. And in Islamabad, we already have 75 smart classrooms donated by Mobilink, and we are now having other partners come in, and hopefully all schools in Islamabad will have smart classrooms and will have technology-driven solutions to so many learning problems. So that is again why I say Islamabad is, because one, it's directly related to the federal government and we are here, but also because it becomes a lab and we learn from it. So just one or two more things, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but we're really concerned about different streams of education in the country. We find the madrasa schools producing a certain type of product. We have the government schools producing another kind of product, and we have the private English medium schools producing a different kind of product. And there are two problems with it. One problem, of course, is that education creates the perceptual framework through which you see the world. So if you have different streams of education, you have different perceptual frameworks. And if you have different perceptual frameworks, you are going to react to reality differently. And I think I don't need to elaborate that many of our problems that we had over the last 15, 20 years, and we have done a great job of fighting them, may have, different perceptions may have contributed to that. So we need to try and create, as far as possible, a single national mindset. It's not easy, and it's not kind of some big brother telling everybody to think alike. No, that's not the issue. The issue is that the nation as a whole has a similar framework. Our heroes should be the same. Our understanding of history should be the same. Are more or less the same for all children. So we are now in the midst of trying to devise a single national curriculum. We've already established a National Curriculum Council. We have set up a body of experts, and we're going to do it deliberately and carefully and slowly. We are not going to rush into it. And we are going to have all the new technologies, artificial intelligence, this, that, and the other. All of them are going to be at different levels of education. We are going to start introducing them. We also have to answer the question of language. Because one of the disconnects in our country is that our Supreme Court has mandated that Urdu would be the official language. We have created an authority called the National Language Promotion Development Authority. There are good people serving over there, including a famous poet, Mr. Iftikhar Arif. We have Urdu Science Board, we have Urdu Dictionary Board. And yet, the demand is for English. हम कह कुछ रहे हैं, हम ये कह रहे हैं कि उर्दू की हमने तरवीह करनी है और उर्दू को आगे लेके जाना है, लेकिन एक्चुअली अगर आप वालिदैन से पूछेंगे किस किस्म की तालीम आप अपने बच्चों के लिए चाहते हैं, तो many of them say we want our kids to study English. Because why? Because who are the successful people in our country? The people who have gone through, or at least have an advantage of going through an English medium education. So, but this question needs an answer, and this question needs a very deliberate answer. Which is the direction we need to go? I mean, there are countries which have, I was yesterday, day before yesterday, I had the privilege of a visit from the Azerbaijani ambassador. And he said that before independence, which was from the Soviet Union, they were doing all their government work, everything in Russian. But now they are converting to Azeri, which is a form of Turkish language. So they are abandoning the language which was, in a sense, given to them by their occupiers. So these are serious issues. Where do you go? Which way do you go as far as language is concerned? People say the best learning takes place in the mother tongue. But then we have a large number of mother tongues. Even in a province you may have variations. So so these are complicated questions. I just wanted to lay them out there because it requires a very careful, deliberate attention, hard work, serious thought process. But the objective is that we create a single national curriculum. And after we have created the single national curriculum, it is adopted, hopefully through consensus by everybody. And then over time, and I'm saying it deliberately because the other day there was a big controversy on Twitter that I was quoted as saying that we have immediately abolished O-level, A-level. No, there is no such thing as immediately abolishing O-level or A-level. But hopefully over time, maybe 7, 8, 10 years, we may move towards a single national certification after 12 years of education. So these things again would require a very careful, deliberate analysis. Very quickly, I'll talk a little bit about higher education, and then I'll beg leave. There are two serious issues in higher education which we are trying to address. One is the issue of quality. And quality has many dimensions, but there are two that I will very quickly mention. One is that we need to ensure that our faculty development keeps pace with what is going on around the world. So that those who are teaching have the requisite skills to impart the knowledge that is required to be imparted. And what is the knowledge that is required to be imparted? That requires constant review of curriculum. I mean, I recently heard, I hope it is not true, but maybe it's a rumor, that I was told that in one computer study course, the students were still being taught floppy disks and things like that. So it's ridiculous. I mean, if your things have moved so far ahead, and so we need a constant curriculum review, constant faculty development, so that instead of having more and more universities, there is a great demand on us for more universities. Everybody who meets me says we need a university in our area. But what we really need is not just too many universities. Good thing to have universities, but we need quality. We need universities that become centers of excellence. We need universities that are truly be able to find a place for themselves in the global ranking. And the second thing is relevance. We have a situation where even PhDs cannot find a job. So when PhDs cannot find a job, that means there is a serious disconnect between what people are studying and what the job market is offering. I'm all for education for the sake of education. It's a good thing. But if philosophy and other things are wonderful things, but you have to have some skill set which relates to the job market. So therefore, we are trying very hard to configure our universities and our courses in a direction where there is a linkage with the workplace. So I haven't had the time to talk about the skills programs that we are doing. We're setting up 50 centers of excellence for different kinds of skill training and so on. There's a whole area of skills which we are now trying to address, and hopefully we will be able to move forward. In conclusion, let me say again that obviously, Rashid Sahab, we are very concerned. We know that it's not enough to plan and think, but it's vitally important to execute. And we understand the challenges of execution also. And that is why the direction that we are trying, it's not a straight line, unfortunately. But it's something that may be a little zigzag here and there, but hopefully with the attention that this government is paying to education, we will get where we want to get. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shafqat Saab, for your thought-provoking views on shaping the education system of Pakistan. End of May, every child out of school in Islamabad to be in school, with the eventual goal of 20 million children who do not have access to education getting an access to education. I think that's a huge task, and all the best to the government for that. We will now open the floor to questions. I would like to request the audience to keep your question short. Please introduce yourself before you ask the question, and also do specify who the question is for. So ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, the panel will be happy to take those for you now. There are two questions at the back, so if we can have a mic over there, and then there's a question in the front. Please do introduce yourself before the question.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zarina Hassan. I'm a doctor and a scientist by training. I lost my sight a few years ago, so I recharted my course as a climber and a painter. The point I'm trying to address and make is that I heard this wonderful talk from the minister, but perhaps I came in a little late, but I could not pick up on any mention towards the issue of special education. As he very rightfully said, technology is a game changer, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. In fact, I'm in the process of writing up a proposal, if he would like to consider at some point a review. When it's the matter of education for the blind, especially, there is a huge gap that has to be filled. Currently, education of the blind is limited to either Braille or to communicated verbally, so much so that the exam system in place also requires the candidate to have a sort of a runner or a writer, as you may call it, recording their answers for them. which in my opinion does not reflect the caliber of the candidate at all. It could be understated or overstated. So technology, as we say, is the game changer. It's light years ahead. I would like an emphasis on, for people like me, when blindness hit them in the epic of our careers, to have gadgets in place which can make access to printed matter readily available, keeping Braille as a very important alternative, of course. So is the government considering an avenue to explore to bring in technology into the realm of special education, and particularly in case of the blind?
Thank you for the suggestion, and obviously technology, and just 2 days ago I had a small presentation from people who have developed various apps for special education, and I'm not aware of special apps for the blind, but certainly technology can make a lot of difference, and we would welcome any specific suggestion. Absolutely.
Another question? Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is for the Minister of Education. Sir, my name is Numan Khan Azimi, and I'm the Pakistani first transformational coach. Mostly I have lived my life in Chicago from 18 years. Now from last 1 year, I am in Pakistan on the way back of giving. I have visited universities, Civil Service Academy, Forest Service Academy, and I particularly work on soft skill training. Do you have any department I can go to, and people like me who travel from overseas, we don't have networking. हमारे कोई रिश्तेदार नहीं है जो आपके साथ connect करवा देंगे. We don't have any network. Do you have a department where we can go and give our proposal, and if you guys like, we can have a government and private collaboration?
I'm sorry, the acoustics of this hall are so bad that I only got half of what you said. Are you saying कि आपकी को connection नहीं है या क्या?
जी, people who are overseas, we want to come back and contribute to our country.
Right.
Do we have a department जिस तरह आपका overseas के लिए एक department education है?
Right. Well, we have something called the National Talent Pool, which is an organization which was set up in the 70s. And the purpose of that organization was to bring overseas Pakistanis, and for a short period over here, either in the universities or some organization where they can impart knowledge for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, and then they can go back. And that National Talent Pool is still there, and that's its purpose. So I think if you mean people who are coming back and resettling in Pakistan, that's a different matter altogether. But for temporary visitors with specialized skills, I think there is a mechanism which is available. We need to publicize it, obviously, so that people know about it.
Yeah, we also have a question on this side.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Nasir Afzal, Vice Chancellor, University of Sahiwal. My question is to the Minister of Education. Yes, there is a lot of demand for new schools, new universities, which probably our resources may not allow at this point. But the very good suggestion is that whatever existing resources we have, we should use them maximally, simply by starting classes 6 o'clock in the morning to 12 to 6, and 6 to 12. Same resources, physical resources, more teachers can be employed, and huge number of students can be accommodated by just simple solution of making more than one session a day. Thank you.
I think you may be aware, or if not, that we have already started a multiple usage of buildings program. In KP, they have started afternoon classes, and we have now, in the interprovincial conference which we are having on Monday, this is one of the issues that we are going to discuss, that because we have access issues, and particularly after class 5, we have primary schools, but we don't have secondary and schools going beyond primary. So in the same premises, if a middle school can be started, that will allow give access to those children who give up education because there is no school available. So we are already familiar with that, and we are already working on that.
Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Air Commodore Shoaib, retired. Thank you very much, Minister, for giving us a brief on lower education level, O level, A level, and higher education level. But I think it was a very short and crispy. We need some more details on that. I'm very thankful to the Minister that you people are working on revamping of our education, because the education of our children, that is the future of this nation. Beside the lower level, I would like to highlight one aspect, critical aspect of our higher education level. Our students, they do a graduation from Pakistan, from maybe Qaid-e-Azam or Islamic University, 4 years course with the project. Once they go to England, they do give them admission in the masters because they're getting the money from that. But the moment we go for the scholarship, they say it is not grade 1 or level 1 BS or BS honors. As a case study, I would like to present my daughter's case, that she did her with a graduation from Islamic University with a good grade, 3.86 CGPA with the project, and she got admission in masters in England. She did her completed, and she got an Imperial College admission, and which is the 4th ranking in the world in the medicine. And they said, so sorry, we can't take you because this is not first level grade. There's a NARIC.
Sorry,
England.
Your first level what? First level grade?
First level of that, they do not consider it as a BSc honors, which make our student eligible for the scholarship, presidential scholarship. And sir, it is not like only at that level. In even Pakistan also, once she applied for the Commonwealth scholarship. Sorry, I'm putting up the case for my daughter as a case study so that we can understand it in a better way. Once she applied for the Commonwealth, the Pakistani HEC, they said, sorry, you are, she got a distinction from England, distinction, that means gold medal. But they said you have a 72%, whereas Pakistani graduate students from masters, they have 90%, so you cannot be eligible. So they throw her away. So my point is that the education curriculum level of our high level education level, that needs to be reviewed, one thing, so that whatever we teach to our students during those 4 years, that is accepted at international level. Few people may say that all the international people, universities, they have a different grading system, but at least for the England, we should be able to tell them, our students, they have done BS 4 years with the project, they should be considered masters. Thank you very much.
Well, as I said earlier on, the real challenge that we have is of quality, and even in our higher education, and quality comes with constant curriculum review, that you keep pace with all the major developments in that particular discipline, and you incorporate them into your curriculum so that your students are up to speed with whatever is going on in the world. Obviously, that's a very big challenge, and therefore, whether it's England or any other place, our education levels should be of that level that the student can go and easily acquire a degree or even a scholarship abroad.
We have a question here.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Sir, my question is for the Federal Minister for Education. My name is Rosheen Hayat. I'm a participant of the Teachers Training Program being conducted by Allama Iqbal University. So since I'm a participant, I sort of have an idea of what the education system is in Pakistan is like. I have had the privilege of studying in a lot of schools abroad because of my because my father held some positions abroad. What I really liked about those schools, and I would like to see implemented in Pakistan, is the skills training being added to the national curriculum. You've already mentioned that skills training programs are being set up in Pakistan separately. But what I'd like to see is them being added into the national curriculum and our regular students also being taught different skills like they are being taught abroad. Thank you.
No, I entirely agree with you. We want to do that, and in fact, there are models of M-Tech, Metric Tech, some such models are already there, and we are right in the midst of trying to see what can we incorporate, how can we do this. Start with Islamabad as usual to see it as a lab, and then scale it up nationally.
Okay. One last question.
But good suggestion.
Please.
Last two questions.
Last two questions. Okay, we have two more to go.
My name is Abdul Rauf Tabani. I'm a civil engineer, but now in business. So I've got two questions. One is for General Hayat, but he's not here. That our policies are very softly being told to the world. So don't you think it is being wrongly read by our neighbors and actions may be a bit bad what we are thinking about? A. Secondly, about the Skills Training Center. I've just visited yesterday Hazard Training Institute, which has a capacity of 10,000 skills trainers per year. And they are under Ministry of Education, under your ministry. And they were looking forward to support the skills training, because what we are talking about is schools, colleges and universities, these are more towards big cities, mega cities. Our people need skills training and placement in Saudi Arabia and Middle East and Far East. Also nurses training. These training centers are all available in Karachi also by the name of MITI, and in Islamabad I have seen a very big, huge under your ministry. But there are no students because people can't afford even that training. So I would request you to kindly look into those areas where already skill training centers are available in very good and modern training centers. But they don't have students because you have to drag them out from the areas, villages and all these places. The city students won't go for those skills training. You have to prepare a program to bring those students from villages. That is the most important thing, and to support those institutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, absolutely.
Sorry, yes, please.
No, I was going to say that absolutely we have an organization called NAVTEC, which is already doing various kinds of skills training. We are working with industry, we are working with various foreign governments, our overseas Pakistani ministry, we are working for them to identify what kind of skills are required. Nurses, incidentally, we don't want to send. There's a huge backlog of nurses in Pakistan. So we want, but we want excellent nursing schools also over here. And we have just prepared a 21 billion intervention as far as the skills program is concerned. So, but you know, as I said earlier in my remarks, that government is a complicated animal. So it takes a very tortuous path trying to get things done. But we are doing our best, and there are nearly 3 million people who come into the job market every year. Most of them are untrained. So, you know, it's a huge task. We have to train these people.
Last question at the back, please.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shahira Moin. I have developed a program, a cleanup program for the Twin Cities and the northern areas of Pakistan, anti-pollution and cleanup program. My suggestion is where we talk about developing a single national curriculum. It's very important that we have students, all our young lot, working for anti-pollution, and because I believe they will be the agents of change if anything has to be done. They are the strongest members we have for this cause. I believe that if this is added in the national curriculum, it would be very, very beneficial for the entire Pakistan. Our ecosystem, our environment, our atmosphere is in a state of emergency and is deteriorating day by day. We need to start working on this. We need to have it in the curriculum so that there is a civic sense. There are children who grow up understanding the hazards of plastic, understanding the hazards of pollution, and working for the betterment of our environment. Thank you.
I entirely agree, and this government's Clean and Green Pakistan program, I tell you, environment is very close to the heart of the Prime Minister. We planted a huge number of trees in KP, and now we are also launched a nationwide Clean and Green program. So clearly citizenship and environment and all of these things should get reflected in the curriculum. And I hope that the eminent people that we have gathered to make the curriculum understand these things and are able to include them. I mean, I don't consider myself an expert in curriculum, but we are trying to put together a group of people who are experts.
All right, thank you very much. I realize that we have a lot of other questions. So any lingering questions can actually be asked during the networking tea, which we will have shortly. I would now like to request Mr. Shafqat Mahmood to present a token of appreciation to Mr. Rashid Bashir. If Asfar and Ali can also join us in the front. Thank you very much, Rashid, for your talk. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause, please. We would now like to request Senator Dr. Musaddiq Malik to present a token of appreciation to Mr. Shafqat Mahmood, Federal Minister for Education.